Commander Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of Earth's last remaining deep space research station, watching distant stars flicker through the quantum distortion field that kept them hidden from Nexar patrols. The station had once been humanity's pride, a gleaming beacon of scientific achievement. Now it was their final refuge, running on minimal power to avoid detection. She should have been sleeping, but sleep had become a distant memory since she'd noticed the pattern. At first, she thought she was imagining things, seeing connections where none existed. The Nexar Empire's quantum communication network was supposed to be perfect, unbreakable. Their civilization had spent millennia developing it, and like everything else about their species, it operated with cold, mathematical precision. But Sarah had always been good at seeing patterns others missed. As a child, she could predict weather changes by watching cloud formations. In college, she'd revolutionized cryptography by finding rhythms in supposedly random number sequences. Now, staring at the decoded fragments of Nexar transmissions scattered across her holographic display, she saw something impossible. "Commander." Dr. James Rivera's voice startled her from her thoughts. The station's lead quantum physicist looked as exhausted as she felt, his dark eyes ringed with shadows. "The latest batch of intercepts is ready for analysis." Sarah nodded, gesturing to the empty seat beside her. "Look at this, James. Tell me I'm not going crazy." She manipulated the holographic display, highlighting specific sequences in the Nexar transmissions. "See how their encryption patterns shift." Everyone assumed it was random, but there's a rhythm to it, like a heartbeat. James leaned forward, his fatigue forgotten as he studied the data. That can't be right. The Nexar don't make mistakes like this. Their systems are perfect. Perfect means predictable," Sarah said, feeling a spark of excitement she hadn't experienced since before the invasion. "They're so focused on mathematical precision that they've created patterns within patterns. Their entire communication network is built on recurring sequences." She brought up another display, this one showing Earth's remaining defense grid. The few surviving satellites and stations blinked like dying fireflies against the vast darkness of space. "We've been trying to fight them on their terms, trying to match their precision, their technology. But what if that's exactly wrong?" James watched as she began inputting new commands into the defense grid's control systems. "What are you thinking?" The Nexar built their entire civilization on the idea that everything can be predicted and controlled if you have enough processing power, Sarah explained, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "They see patterns everywhere because that's how their minds work. But humans? We're messy, unpredictable. They consider it our greatest weakness." The defense grid's display began to change as she worked, the previously rigid patrol patterns dissolving into something more organic, more chaotic. What if it's actually our greatest strength? Understanding dawned in James's eyes. "You want to use their pattern recognition against them?" Sarah nodded, feeling more alive than she had in months. "Every time they detect one of our ships, their systems automatically begin analyzing its movements, looking for patterns to predict its course. But what if there are no patterns to find? What if we deliberately introduce chaos into our defense systems?" She brought up a simulation showing the Nexar warship encountering one of their modified defense platforms. The platform's movements appeared random, but Sarah had coded specific triggers into its behavior, responses that would only make sense to a human observer. The simulation showed the Nexar ship's targeting systems failing repeatedly as they tried to establish a lock on the unpredictable target. "This is just the beginning," Sarah said, her voice growing stronger with conviction. "If we can crack their communication patterns, we can start feeding false information into their network. Information that follows their mathematical rules perfectly, but leads them exactly where we want them to go." James stared at the displays, his expression a mixture of hope and disbelief. The entire Nexar Empire is built on the idea that their logic is infallible. If we can prove it's not, we can give humanity a fighting chance. Sarah finished. She turned to look out the viewport again, But this time she wasn't seeing the stars. She was seeing possibilities. They conquered us because they understood everything about how we fought wars, all our strategies, all our tactical doctrines. They predicted every move we'd make because we were trying to fight logically. She gestured to the new defense grid patterns, which now moved like schools of fish or flocks of birds, organic, fluid movements that followed rules too subtle for machines to grasp. But humans aren't logical. We're intuitive, creative. We see patterns in chaos and find chaos in patterns. It's time we stopped trying to beat them at their own game and started playing ours. A warning light flashed on the main console, long-range sensors detecting Nexar ships entering the outer system. Sarah straightened her uniform, feeling the weight of command settle onto her shoulders along with a new sense of purpose. "Send word to all remaining Earth forces," she ordered, her voice steady and clear. "Tell them we found a way to fight back. And James," she turned to the physicist with a slight smile, "get some sleep. Tomorrow, we start teaching our defense grid to dance." As James hurried off to spread the word, Sarah remained at the viewport, watching the distant stars. For the first time since the Nexar invasion, she felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. The Empire had built its power on perfect prediction, on the absolute certainty that every effect had a calculable cause. They were about to learn that human beings had a way of defying calculations. The war wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But as Sarah began modifying more defense protocols, introducing elements of controlled chaos into their systems, she knew they had found their path forward. The Nexar Empire was about to discover that their greatest weakness wasn't humanity's primitive technology or limited numbers. It was their inability to understand that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't perfect order. It's the beautiful unpredictability of the human spirit. Dr. Marcus Patel's laboratory in the underground facilities of Luna Base hummed with energy as holographic simulations danced through the air. 3 months had passed since Commander Chen's breakthrough, and humanity's resistance had evolved from desperate survival to calculated defiance. Marcus watched as his latest combat simulation played out, Earth ships moving in seemingly random patterns that somehow, impossibly, formed a cohesive defense strategy. "Run it again," he told his AI assistant, adjusting variables in the quantum probability matrix. This time, increase the chaos factor by 12%. The simulation reset, showing a fleet of Earth vessels facing off against Nexar warships. The Earth ships' movements appeared completely erratic, yet they maintained perfect spacing and coverage. It was like watching a jazz improvisation translated into space combat. Dr. Patel, a young engineer, Maya Santos, entered the lab, carrying fresh data from the latest skirmish with Nexar patrols. "You need to see this." Marcus looked up from his simulations, noting the excitement in Maya's voice. She'd been his student before the invasion, and now she was one of their best minds in quantum mechanics. "What have you found?" Maya projected a new hologram showing combat footage from the asteroid belt. A small group of Earth ships had successfully evaded a Nexar battle group using the early versions of Marcus's chaos-based movement protocols. The Nexar ships completely failed to establish target locks. Their targeting systems kept trying to predict where our ships would be, but there was no pattern to predict. Marcus finished, a smile spreading across his face. He pulled up his original equations, the ones that had seemed like madness 3 months ago. "You know what the Nexar call us. Primitive. Inefficient. They see our emotions, our intuition, our creativity as weaknesses to be eliminated." He gestured to the simulation still running behind them. "But look at this. Really look at it. Our ships aren't moving randomly. They're moving like a flock of birds, like leaves in the wind. Natural patterns that emerge from chaos itself." Maya nodded, her eyes tracking the complex dance of the simulated vessels. "The Nexar can't understand it because they can't quantify it. They're looking for mathematical patterns, but these movements come from something deeper." Marcus walked to the main display, bringing up his latest project, The hologram showed a new type of neural interface, one that would allow pilots to control their ships through intuition rather than explicit commands. This is what I've been working on. Instead of trying to program specific responses, we let the pilots feel their way through space. Their instincts, their gut reactions, those become part of the ship's movement patterns. But how do we coordinate multiple ships? Maya asked, though her expression suggested she was already seeing the possibilities. Marcus's grin widened. The same way a jazz band coordinates without sheet music. The same way birds in a flock know when to turn. We create a loose framework, basic rules that everyone understands. But within that framework, each pilot has complete freedom to improvise. He brought up another simulation, this one showing hundreds of small fighter-sized vessels moving in concert. Look at this. Each ship follows 3 simple rules. Maintain minimum safe distance from others, match general velocity of nearby allies, and respond to threats with maximum unpredictability. Everything else is up to the pilot's instincts. Maya watched in amazement as the simulated fleet flowed like water around Nexar attacks, breaking apart and reforming in patterns that no tactical computer could predict. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's human," Marcus corrected. "This is how we've always fought. Not with perfect plans, but with adaptation and improvisation." The Nexar spent millennia eliminating chaos from their civilization. They see the universe as a great machine that can be perfectly predicted if you have enough data. But life itself emerged from chaos, and that's something they've forgotten. A priority alert flashed across their screens. Commander Chen requesting their presence in the Strategic Command Center. As they hurried through Luna Base's corridors, Marcus felt a growing sense of anticipation. The Nexar Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds by imposing order on chaos. Now humanity would show them that chaos itself could be a weapon. In the command center, they found Sarah Chen studying a massive tactical display showing Nexar fleet movements throughout the solar system. She looked up as they entered, her expression grave but determined. "Dr. Patel, how close are we to implementing your new combat systems fleet-wide?" Marcus projected his latest results onto the main display. "The basic protocols are ready now. The neural interfaces will take another week, but even without them, our pilots can start training in the new movement patterns immediately." Sarah nodded, highlighting a section of space near Jupiter. "Good, because we've detected a major Nexar fleet gathering here. Intelligence suggests they've noticed our changed tactics and are adapting their attack algorithms. They're bringing in their most advanced tactical computers." "Let them," Marcus said with quiet confidence. "They can't adapt to what they can't understand. Every time they think they found a pattern in our movements, we'll change the underlying rules. Our strength isn't in having a perfect system. It's in our ability to throw away the system entirely and create a new one on the fly." Sarah studied the holographic simulation still running from Marcus's lab. "You're certain our pilots can handle this level of improvisation in actual combat?" "More than certain," Marcus replied. "This isn't just a tactical system. It's an expression of who we are as a species. The Nexar made a fundamental mistake when they dismissed human unpredictability as a weakness. They never understood that chaos and creativity are 2 sides of the same coin." He brought up one final simulation, showing Earth's defensive fleet moving like a living thing, each ship part of a greater whole yet maintaining its individual freedom of action. "We're not going to beat them by becoming more like them. We're going to beat them by becoming more like ourselves." As the others watched the simulation, Marcus thought about all the times throughout history when humanity had faced seemingly insurmountable odds. We survived not because we were stronger or more advanced, but because we could adapt, create, and find opportunity in disaster. The Nexar Empire was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Fleet Captain Maya Santos felt her consciousness merge with her ship through the neural interface as Earth's defensive fleet took position near Jupiter's orbit. The massive gas giant loomed behind them, its swirling storms a fitting backdrop for what was about to unfold. 200 Earth vessels, each connected to its pilot through Dr. Patel's revolutionary system, weighted in a loose formation that would have made any traditional military tactician cringe. All pilots. Commander Chen's voice resonated through the neural network. Remember your training. Don't think about patterns. Don't plan your moves. Feel the space around you and trust your instincts. Maya closed her eyes, letting her awareness expand through her ship's sensors. She could feel the other vessels around her, their positions and movements becoming as natural as knowing where her own limbs were in space. More importantly, she could feel the approaching Nexar fleet. 500 warships in perfect geometric formation, their golden hulls reflecting the distant sunlight. "They're scanning us," her sensor officer reported, his voice tight with tension. "Their targeting systems are active." Through the neural link, Maya sensed the collective anticipation of her fellow pilots. Many had lost friends and family when the Nexar first arrived. All had lived under their oppressive rule. Now, finally, they had a chance to fight back. The Nexar fleet's first volley lit up space, precisely calculated energy beams targeting where their computers predicted Earth ships would be. But Earth's fleet moved like leaves in a storm, each ship following its pilot's intuition rather than tactical doctrine. The deadly beams passed through empty space as Earth's vessels flowed around them in an improvised dance. "Now," Commander Chen ordered, "show them what humanity can do." Maya let her consciousness fully merge with her ship, feeling the quantum drive respond to her thoughts. Around her, the Earth fleet burst into motion. There was no formation, no predetermined attack pattern. Each ship moved according to its pilot's instincts, yet somehow they maintained perfect spacing and coverage. The Nexar response was predictable. Their ships adjusted formation, tactical computers analyzing the chaos for patterns they could exploit. But there were no patterns to find. Each human pilot was creating their own path through space, responding to threats with the same instinctive grace that their ancestors had used to dodge predators on ancient savannas. "They're trying to establish a containment grid," Maya transmitted through the neural network, sensing the Nexar ship's movements. "They think we'll run out of energy and be forced into predictable paths. Then let's show them how humans handle containment," Commander Chen responded. "Quantum surge maneuver, on my mark." Maya felt her ship's systems align with the others. Dr. Patel's chaos-based protocols allowed them to synchronize without losing their unpredictability. When Chen gave the signal, 200 quantum drives pulsed in perfect discord. The resulting spatial distortion shattered the Nexar formation. Their ships, designed to maintain precise distances and angles, suddenly found themselves in a space where the laws of physics seemed to hiccup. The perfectly ordered Empire fleet broke apart like a crystal hitting concrete. "Their targeting systems are completely offline," Maya's tactical officer reported with barely contained excitement. "They can't compensate for the quantum fluctuations." Through the neural link, Maya coordinated with nearby ships without need for verbal communication. They flowed through the gaps in the Nexar formation, their weapons finding targets that the Empire's supposedly superior technology couldn't defend against. Nexar ships, unable to predict where attacks would come from, fell one by one to the chaos-enhanced Earth fleet. On her tactical display, Maya watched the impossible unfold. The smaller Earth fleet wasn't just surviving, it was winning. The Nexar vessels, for all their technological superiority, couldn't adapt to an enemy that defied prediction. Their perfect formations became a liability, their synchronized movements making them vulnerable to attacks that came from seemingly random vectors. "This is impossible," a Nexar commander transmitted on an open channel, their artificially perfect voice showing signs of strain. "Your tactical patterns violate all known combat algorithms. How are you maintaining fleet cohesion without standardized protocols?" "That's humanity's secret," Commander Chen responded, her voice carrying pride that every Earth pilot felt through the neural link. "We don't need protocols to work together. We understand chaos because we embrace it. Every one of our pilots is free to follow their instincts, and that makes us stronger than any algorithm you can devise." The battle continued to unfold like a deadly ballet. Earth ships moved in ways that seemed to defy physics, their quantum drives creating patterns of interference that the Nexar computers couldn't process. The Empire fleet's responses became increasingly erratic as their tactical systems failed to find solutions to the chaos confronting them. Maya felt a surge of fierce joy as she guided her ship through a particularly complex sequence of maneuvers. This wasn't just combat, it was creation. Each pilot was adding their own verse to a symphony of controlled chaos, turning space itself into their canvas. Their fleet is retreating, the tactical officer announced, disbelief evident in his voice. They're actually retreating. The Nexar ships, their perfect formation shattered, their tactical computers overwhelmed, began jumping to hyperspace. They left behind nearly 100 destroyed vessels, more losses than they had suffered in the last 1,000 years of their expansion. As the last enemy ship disappeared, a profound silence fell over the neural network. Then, slowly, the reality of what they had achieved began to sink in. They had done the impossible. Humanity, with its primitive reliance on intuition and creativity, had defeated the most powerful military force in known space. "Well done, all of you," Commander Chen transmitted. "Today we proved that the greatest power in the universe isn't perfect order. It's the human spirit's ability to embrace chaos and find beauty in the unexpected." Maya looked out at Jupiter's swirling storms, thinking how they resembled the fluid movements their fleet had used to achieve victory. The Nexar Empire had spent millennia trying to eliminate chaos from existence. Today, they had learned that chaos, in the hands of those who understood it, could be the most powerful force of all. This battle would change everything. The Nexar would be forced to recognize that their perfect systems had met their match in human unpredictability. But more importantly, humanity had rediscovered its greatest strength, not in trying to match the Empire's precision, but in embracing their own unique nature. Junior analyst Vex 427 knew she was committing a serious violation of Imperial protocol. In her private chamber aboard the Nexar science vessel, Quantum Harmony, she had recreated something forbidden, a small device that could receive human entertainment broadcasts. The Empire's defeat at Jupiter had led to increased security measures, but it had also sparked an irresistible curiosity among younger Nexars like herself. The holographic display activated, filling her chamber with colors that defied the Empire's prescribed aesthetic patterns. Humans called it art, a concept that had once seemed meaningless to her. But as she watched their stories, listened to their music, and studied their dances, she began to understand something that shook the very foundation of her worldview. Her research partner, Tix 891, entered her chamber without announcing himself, another violation of protocol that had become increasingly common among their generation. "They're broadcasting something new," he said, his crystalline form shifting with barely contained excitement. "Something they call jazz." The sound that filled her chamber was unlike anything in the Empire's approved audio database. It followed no predictable pattern, yet somehow maintained a coherent structure. Notes flowed and merged in ways that should have been chaotic, but instead created something beautiful. How do they coordinate without a central timing system? Tix 891 wondered aloud, his form resonating with the irregular rhythms. Each musician seems to be following their own pattern, yet they maintain perfect harmony. The same way their ships moved in the Jupiter battle. Vex 427 realized, making connections that would have been considered dangerous by Imperial standards. They're not following patterns. They're creating them in real time, responding to each other through something they call intuition. She brought up classified footage from the battle, synchronizing it with the jazz performance. The movements of Earth's fleet matched the music's flow, unpredictable yet purposeful, chaotic yet coordinated. "Look at this. Their entire civilization operates this way. Art, music, combat. It's all connected by their ability to find order in chaos." Their discussion was interrupted by an alert, mandatory attendance at a general assembly. In the Great Hall of the Quantum Harmony, thousands of Nexar gathered to hear High Commander Zek-001 address the recent disturbances in Imperial society. "We have detected concerning deviations from standard behavior patterns." The commander's voice resonated through the chamber. "Young citizens accessing unauthorized human transmissions, engaging in non-optimal social interactions, creating unauthorized art forms." Vex 427 felt her crystalline structure tense, but she noticed something remarkable. Among the younger Nexar, there was no fear, only increased interest. The commander's words were having the opposite effect of what was intended. "The humans represent a primitive state of existence," Zek-001 continued. "Their reliance on emotion and intuition makes them inefficient, unpredictable. Perhaps that's exactly why they defeated our fleet," a young voice called out from the crowd. "An unprecedented breach of protocol." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly, crystalline forms shifting in ways that reflected new thoughts, new possibilities. Later, in a secret gathering in the ship's maintenance sector, hundreds of young Nexar met to share their discoveries about human culture. Vex 427 watched in amazement as her peers attempted to recreate human art forms, their crystalline bodies moving in experimental patterns that would have been considered malformed just months ago. "The Empire taught us that perfection comes from eliminating variables," she addressed the gathering. "But look at Earth's ecosystems, their societies, their art. They show us that true perfection can emerge from embracing variables, from allowing chaos and order to dance together." She displayed her latest analysis, a comparison of Nexar and human neural patterns. "Our minds were engineered for perfect logic, but we're starting to show new neural formations. Exposure to human creativity is actually changing how we think." The evidence was visible in the gathering itself. Young Nexar were developing individual variations in their crystalline structures. Subtle differences that would have been corrected in previous generations, but now represented something revolutionary: the emergence of individual identity. "The Empire fears human unpredictability because it cannot control it," Tyx 891 added. "But what if that's not a weakness? What if the ability to embrace uncertainty, to adapt and create, is actually the universe's greatest strength?" As if to demonstrate his point, someone began playing a human melody on a modified quantum resonator. Others joined in, their crystalline forms creating harmonics that would have been considered dissonant by Imperial standards, but somehow created something hauntingly beautiful. Vex 427 felt her own structure responding to the music, developing new resonance patterns that seemed to unlock previously dormant neural pathways. She understood now why the Empire had worked so hard to suppress human influence. Creativity wasn't just a different way of thinking. It was infectious, transformative, revolutionary. Through her research terminal, she could access the Empire's real-time data networks. Throughout Nexar space, similar gatherings were taking place. Young citizens were questioning the rigid structures that had defined their civilization for millennia. They were creating art, making music, telling stories, embracing the chaos that the Empire had spent so long trying to eliminate. The change couldn't be stopped because it wasn't being imposed from outside. It was growing from within, sparked by humanity's example, but fueled by the Nexar's own awakening desire for something more than perfect order. Their civilization was beginning to understand that true evolution required both stability and chaos, pattern and possibility. As she watched her fellow young Nexar experiment with new forms of expression, Vex 427 realized that humanity's greatest victory hadn't been at Jupiter. It was happening right here, in countless secret gatherings across the Empire, as a new generation discovered that the path to enlightenment didn't lie in eliminating chaos, but in learning to dance with it. The Great Hall of the Imperial Palace on Nexar Prime had never witnessed anything like this. High Commander Zek-001 stood before the Council of Elders, watching as centuries of unchanging tradition crumbled around him. Through the crystalline walls, he could see the capital city's perfect geometric patterns being transformed by splashes of unauthorized color and form, art created by young Nexar, who no longer feared expression. "The contamination has spread beyond containment," he reported, his voice carrying none of the artificial perfection that had once been mandatory. 87% of our younger generation has been exposed to human cultural influences. They're not just accessing Earth broadcasts anymore. They're creating their own art, music, and literature. First Elder Kek000 shifted his ancient crystalline form, producing harmonics that would have once been considered dissonant. "Perhaps," he said, surprising everyone present, "it is time we questioned whether contamination is the correct term." The chamber erupted in shocked resonances as Kek000 activated a holographic display. It showed neural pattern analyses from across the Empire, not just from the young rebels, but from every generation. The patterns were changing, becoming more complex, more vibrant. "Look at these readings," the First Elder continued. "Our society has maintained perfect stability for 10,000 years. We thought this was strength. But look at what happens when we introduce controlled variability." The display shifted, showing the explosion of neural complexity in Nexer minds exposed to human culture. "We're not degrading. We're evolving." At that moment, the chamber's doors opened, admitting an unprecedented delegation. Commander Sarah Chen, Dr. Marcus Patel, and Captain Maya Santos entered alongside VEX 427 and other young Nexer leaders. Their presence here, humans in the heart of the Empire, was itself a symbol of how much had already changed. "Honored elders," VEX 427 addressed the council, her crystalline form displaying new harmonics that somehow enhanced rather than disrupted her communication. "We come before you not as rebels, but as the future. The humans have shown us that true perfection isn't the elimination of chaos, it's the harmony between order and possibility." Sarah Chen stepped forward, her presence commanding respect even among those who had once dismissed her species as primitive. "We don't come to destroy your civilization," she said. "We come to help it grow. Humanity's strength isn't in our technology or our numbers. It's in our ability to embrace change, to find new paths forward." Dr. Patil activated his own display, showing the principles behind Earth's chaos-enhanced combat systems. But now these same principles were being applied to art, architecture, and social organization throughout the Empire. "Look at how your young people have taken our concepts of controlled chaos and applied them to your own civilization. They're not rejecting order. They're finding a deeper order that includes both pattern and possibility." The chamber filled with complex harmonics as council members processed this information. Through the windows, they could see the capital city continuing its transformation. The rigid geometric patterns weren't being destroyed. They were being enhanced by organic forms, creating something entirely new. Maya Santos, who had led Earth's fleet at Jupiter, spoke next. "Your empire has achieved incredible things through the pursuit of perfect order. But the universe itself isn't perfectly ordered. It's a dance between chaos and pattern. That's what makes it fertile ground for life and evolution." First Elder Kek000 rose, his ancient form somehow seeming younger as he addressed the gathering. "For 10,000 years, we sought to eliminate uncertainty from existence. We saw the humans' embrace of chaos as primitive, dangerous. But look at what they've achieved by dancing with uncertainty instead of fearing it." He gestured to the changed cityscape beyond the chamber. "Their influence hasn't weakened us. It has awakened parts of ourselves we had forgotten. Our young people aren't just imitating human art and music. They're creating new forms that merge our mathematical precision with organic creativity." The evidence was undeniable. Throughout the Empire, Nexer society was transforming. The rigid hierarchies weren't being torn down. They were evolving into more flexible structures that could adapt and grow. The perfect geometric patterns weren't being abandoned. They were being integrated into more complex, living designs. "We stand at a crossroads," VEX 427 declared, her voice carrying the harmony of both cultures. "The Empire can either resist this change and shatter, or embrace it and transcend. We can become something greater than either of our civilizations imagined possible. As if to demonstrate her words, she began to resonate with a new kind of music, not purely human jazz, nor traditional Nexar harmonics, but something that merged both traditions. Other young Nexar joined in, their crystalline forms creating complex patterns of light and sound. After a moment's hesitation, human voices joined the harmony, creating something that had never existed before in the galaxy. First Elder Keck-000 rose again, his decision carrying the weight of 10,000 years of history. "The Empire has always sought perfection," he declared. "Perhaps it is time we recognize that true perfection includes imperfection, that true strength embraces both certainty and possibility." The formal declaration that followed would be remembered as the moment when everything changed. The Nexar Empire would not fall to human influence. It would transcend, becoming something new that celebrated both order and chaos, pattern and possibility, tradition and innovation.